Hey everyone, welcome to Dragonflight Content Season 1 here on the channel. In this video, I'm going to be showcasing a Fury Warrior leveling build for World of Warcraft Dragonflight. This build is going to work well for you for leveling throughout the Dragon Isles. It's also going to work good for solo play, world quest, and non-instance group play. In this video, first thing we're going to do is hop in and talk about the various spells that we're going to be using. Then we're going to jump into the talent tree, and I'll show you a couple places where you can tweak the build if you want to. Then we'll go and we'll talk about the rotation for the build, and then we'll also go out and showcase the build out in the open world. All right, so we're going to go ahead and jump in game, and the first thing we're going to do is talk about our abilities. Now, obviously, if we open up our skill book, we are going to have a lot of different abilities in here. However, not all of them are going to be ones that we're going to use. And my goal for these videos is just to get you playing as soon as possible, rather than to deep dive into every single thing that's available. Okay, I still want to let you know everything that's going on. But again, there's stuff like Shield Block or Shield Slam we're just not going to use, so we're not going to incorporate that into this particular video. So if we take a look at my action bars down here, I have these set up in a particular way, and we're just going to go through all of the various abilities that are here on the action bar. Okay, so first we have our bread and butter ability here. This is Bloodthirst. Bloodthirst is a short cooldown ability that deals a moderate amount of damage to the target and restores 3% of our health. It also generates rage for us. Rage for us is the resource that we are going to build up and then spend on other abilities. In addition to Bloodthirst, we have various other abilities that we use as part of our core rotation. So we have Slam. Slam is a ability that does a pretty high amount of damage, generates some rage, and is on a longer cooldown. We also have Whirlwind. Whirlwind is on a moderate cooldown. It deals damage to the targets around us, and then it also causes our next 4 single target melee attacks to strike up to 4 additional targets for 50% damage. This also generates rage for us as well. So anytime we're in an AoE situation, we can use Whirlwind to do damage to the enemies around us, but to also enable our single target abilities to do damage to all the targets around us as well. In addition to that, we have Execute. So Execute is a instant cast ability with a low cooldown that does a very high amount of damage to enemies, but it's also only usable on enemies that have 35% or less health. It does generate quite a bit of rage for us, and we'll be able to basically spam this a lot once the target gets down to low health. Finally, our last sort of core rotation ability that we're going to be using all the time here is Rampage. Rampage is our rage spender, so as we build up rage, we need something to spend it on. That's going to be Rampage. There's no cooldown on this ability because you have to have the resource for it. This is going to do 4 brutal strikes that do a pretty high amount of damage to the target. So those are kind of the 5 core abilities that we're going to be using all the time as we perform our rotation. And then we have several other abilities that come into play to allow us to increase our damage or to allow us to, defend ourselves or have some additional utility. So let's go ahead and get into talking about those. So in addition to our 5 kind of core abilities here, we have some other abilities we can use that will increase our offensive damage, the amount of damage that we deal. The first one is going to be Odin's Fury. This is an ability on a 45-second cooldown. It does a very high amount of damage to all enemies within 12 yards, and then it also does a bleed, essentially, a damage over time here as well, and it generates a good chunk of rage. It does everything that we want it to do, right? It does damage in an AoE, it's going to add a dot to those targets as well, and it's going to generate some rage on them. So we want to be using this ability as often as possible. We also have access to Thunderous Roar. This is an ability on a longer cooldown, but this will deal a large chunk of damage to all enemies around us, and it will also cause a bleed on them as well, and it generates 10 rage. So effectively, it's kind of like another version of Odin's Fury for us, but on a cooldown that's twice the length, okay? And it also does significantly more damage on that damage over time bleed than Odin's Fury will do. Along with that, we also have Ravager. Ravager is another longer cooldown ability we have. This creates a whirling weapon at the target location and does a ton of damage to enemies over about 11 or 12 seconds. This also generates a ton of rage every time it deals damage. So this is another one we can drop on AoE targets to generate additional rage and just do a ton of damage. Our final sort of offensive ability to help us boost our damage is going to be Avatar. Avatar is a longer cooldown ability here. It transforms us into a Colossus for 20 seconds, which causes us to do 20% increased damage. This also removes all roots and snares and generates some rage for us. So we have 4 different abilities, 4 different buttons we can kind of push. And really the goal here, if we're just fighting against normal enemies, is to kind of rotate through these every time we do a pull. So we always have sort of a big cooldown that we're using. But if you're going to be fighting a really tough enemy like a rare or an elite, you could pop all these cooldowns to just drop a ton of damage onto a single target or a really big pull that you're doing. So if you're doing those really big pulls, you got to have ways to defend yourself, right? So what we have is a couple of abilities here. We have Impending Victory. This is our main way we keep ourselves healed, we keep ourselves topped off, and prevent ourselves from getting so low that we're at risk of dying. So this ability has a short cooldown. It's about 25 seconds. And it will instantly attack the target to deal some damage, and it will heal you for 30% of your maximum health. So the number doesn't matter, it's 30% across the board. However, when you kill an enemy that yields experience or honor, which you should be doing all the time when you're leveling, it will reset the cooldown of Impending Victory and make it cost no rage. So the goal with this ability is as an enemy gets down and they're almost ready to die, you want to cast Impending Victory to get the 30% heal for yourself, and then right after that, hopefully, they die, and then the cooldown resets on Impending Victory. You fight the next enemy, you get them down pretty low, you hit Impending Victory to get your health back up, and then they die, and the cooldown resets. So that's kind of the normalized flow for what you're going to do with Impending Victory, but if you're in a really tough situation with a lot of pulls, you're also just going to be hitting this button every time it pops up in order to keep your health topped off. It is very, very effective if you use it correctly at keeping yourself healed, and in most scenarios, you won't really need anything else to keep you healed up as a Fury Warrior besides Impending Victory. However, if you run into a circumstance where you do need a little bit of extra, we have Enraged Regeneration. So this is going to reduce damage that we're taking by 30%, and it will cause Bloodthirst to restore an additional 20% health. And this is usable when we're stunned or incapacitated and lasts for 11 seconds. This is on a fairly long cooldown, one of the longest cooldowns we have. But basically, if you're in a tough spot, you can pop Enraged Regeneration for the damage reduction. And then really what you want to do after you hit this is you want to use your Bloodthirst ability as many times as you possibly can in order to restore all that additional health that you're getting from the bonus of Enraged Regeneration. If you just pop Enraged Regeneration and you think, I'm good, that's not really the case, okay? You really do need to pair this with casting Bloodthirst so that you can get those additional heals. So then our last little ability here that we have, it doesn't really do much in terms of helping us stay alive in terms of damage reduction or healing. However, it does get us out of situations where we might be taking a lot of damage. So we have Berserker's Rage. This is on a shorter cooldown. It causes you to go berserk, removing and granting immunity to fear, sap, and incapacitate effects for 6 seconds. So if you get feared and you're taking a lot of damage, you're running into AoEs, you're headed towards a cliff or something, you can hit Berserker's Rage in order to stop those effects from causing you to get into those bad situations where you may be at risk of dying. Okay? So, along with that, we have a couple other abilities that we want to talk about here. So the next category we have is our movement abilities. Our first and primary one is going to be Charge. This is an ability that's on a moderate cooldown, 17 seconds or so, and this is going to charge us to the enemy and deal damage, root the target for 1 second, and then generate a very high amount of rage for us. Now, with our talent build, we actually do have 2 charges of charge. So we can charge and do some stuff and charge again. This helps us to be able to charge pretty much as often as we want without having to worry about the cooldown. Our other additional movement skill ability we have is Heroic Leap. This is on a 30-second cooldown. This will cause you to leap through the air and slam down with force, dealing a little bit of damage to all enemies within 8 yards. You're not really using this for the damage capability here, but you are using this for the mobility aspect. This can just help you get to from point A to point B faster, or it can actually let you kind of like climb to some places you normally wouldn't be able to climb, because if you can heroic leap to it, it'll just put you up there, which is really nice. And then, while not a movement skill, we do have access to the Heroic Throw ability. This will throw your weapon at the target, dealing physical damage and generating a high amount of threat. As a Fury Warrior, the main thing we're doing with this is we're using it to help pull more enemies in so that we can AoE down a bunch of enemies all at the same time. Next, we have our crowd control abilities. The first one being Pummel. Super important ability to use. So this is on a 14-second cooldown. It interrupts spell casting from the target and prevents any spell in that school from being cast for 4 seconds. In Dragonflight, there are a lot of enemies that have casted abilities, and interrupting them will save you a ton of damage taken. And so it's very useful to get familiar with this ability and interrupt as many spell casts as you can, or as you're playing through and you start to recognize which ones do a ton of damage, you can use Pummel for that. However, if Pummel's on cooldown, we do kind of have a backup ability, which is Stormbolt. So Stormbolt is on a 30-second cooldown, about double the length of the Pummel cooldown. And this is a stun. So this does damage, and it stuns the target for 4 seconds. Now, you can absolutely use this to give yourself a window to maybe let your impending victory cooldown come back up or something like that. But also these stuns count as interrupts. So if you interrupt a spell with your Pummel and then the enemy or a second enemy that you pull is casting that same dangerous ability, you can use Stormbolt as your interrupt ability to use against the target. We have one additional crowd control ability here, which is going to be Hamstring. Hamstring is a movement speed reduction ability that we cast on the opponent. It reduces their movement speed by 50% for 15 seconds. And then the final ability we have here is actually going to be Taunt. So Taunt is our ability that taunts the target to attack us. It generates a lot of threat. And you may be asking, why do we want to use that on a Fury Warrior? Well, when you're playing solo, you can actually use Taunt the same way you would use Heroic Throw in order to get an enemy that's far away to come over and attack you. So Heroic Throw has an 8 to 30 yard range, and Taunt has a 30-yard range. So you can use both of these to pull over additional enemies so that you can AoE them down. All right, so let's hop into the talent build real quick, and I just want to touch on a couple of things that we want to be aware of, okay? So first off, right here underneath Avatar in the talent tree, and this build is for level 70, but I do have versions of this build for every 10 levels, starting with level 20, that you're able to check out. Just check the link in the description below, and you can grab the one that's appropriate for your level range. Okay, so right here under Avatar, we have picked up Titan's Torment. This says activating Avatar, cast Odin's Fury. Activating Odin's Fury, cast Avatar at reduce effectiveness. So, just to recap, we have Odin's Fury over here. This is our 45-second cooldown that does a bunch of physical damage, adds the damage over time, and generates some rage for us. Well, now, every time we cast this, we're also going to get a not quite as powerful version of Avatar. So Avatar is giving us that 20% increased damage. If we go ahead and cast our Odin's Fury, you see we get an Avatar here as well. So the reduction here comes from the fact that it does not last as long. If you noticed, it was about a 5-second Avatar is what we get. So now every time we cast Odin's Fury, in addition to all the damage, we also get a 5-second 20% increased damage boost. So it's a really good idea to Odin's Fury and then DPS as much as you can in the next like 5 seconds. Okay. Other notable abilities and talents that we picked up over here. So we have Invigorating Fury. So our Enraged Regeneration, which is our damage reduction, and then our ability that causes our Bloodthirst right here to restore more health. We've picked this up, so now it will instantly heal for 20% of our maximum health. So in addition to the damage reduction that we're going to get, and also the boost to Bloodthirst, we get an instant 20% heal as well. So this makes it something that you can use and get an immediate effect from that's going to help with your health total. Not just damage reduction, but help give you a boost as well. Down here underneath our Odin's Fury, we have picked up Dancing Blades. So Odin's Fury will increase your auto attack damage and speed by 30% for 10 seconds. So anytime we hit Odin's Fury, we're getting an attack speed boost. We're getting the avatar bonus. It's just a really, really good button for us to hit as much as we can. Also, this is a one-handed dual-wield Annihilator build. So this build is intended to use one-handed weapons. It's intended to be a very fast auto-attacking build, and your one-handed weapons will swing faster than your two-handed weapons. I leveled it this way from 60 to 70, no problems at all. So we are taking this Annihilator node right here. So instead of having Raging Blow, which is a core Fury Warrior ability, we are replacing that with Annihilator, which is a passive that causes your auto attacks to deal additional physical damage and generate 2 rage. So the reason we want to use those one-handed weapons is we want to auto attack faster. So we get more rage generation and we do get more physical damage. Now, if you are absolutely set on using two-handed weapons as opposed to one-handed weapons, you still can use this build. You don't actually need to change anything with Annihilator. What you want to change is actually right here in this section. So we are taking on the left-hand side Single-Minded Fury, and we're also taking Frenzied Flurry. So Single-Minded Fury says, while dual-wielding a pair of one-handed weapons, your damage done is increased by 5%, and your movement speed is increased by 5%. So all you're getting here if you switch to two-handed weapons is going to be 5% increased movement speed, which is not really worth the talent point. The one that follows after this is Frenzied Flurry. Increase auto attack damage with one-handed weapons by 5%, and your auto attack critical strikes have a 50% chance to enrage you. So again, this increases our auto attack damage, and we get additional critical strikes and chance to be enraged, which is really, really good for us because we have a lot of benefits from becoming enraged that we will talk about. So if you want to go with the two-handed version of the build, then you can take these 2 points and you can literally just shift them over here if you want, or you can put them into really anything that you think looks nice for you that does not involve Raging Blow only. So you don't want to put it in Improved Raging Blow. However, you could put it into Slaughtering Strikes because this has an Annihilator clause here. So you could put your point into Vicious Contempt and cause Bloodthirst to deal increased damage to enemies that are at low health. You could put it into Blood Craze, where your Bloodthirst will increase the critical strike of your next Bloodthirst by 15%, stacking up to 5 times. You could put it into the haste buff for Rampage, although I don't really recommend it. And then you could also put it into Slaughtering Strikes. My recommendation is that you put 1 point into Slaughtering Strikes, and then you can pick up either Vicious Contempt or Blood Craze. If you want to focus on those sort of execution phase burst damage using your Bloodthirst, then pick up Vicious Contempt. If you really just want like a nice little passive bonus that you don't have to worry about, you could pick up Blood Craze. Okay? So we kind of touched on the things I wanted to cover here in the talent build. So we're going to pop back into our spell book real fast and just make sure we haven't missed anything that we really want to point out here. There are a couple things that I want to point out. The main one being Enrage. So Enrage is the kind of core mechanic for the Fury Warrior here. So becoming Enraged will increase your damage done for 4 seconds. Okay, and then we have various things in our talent build that are going to enrage us. We're going to get bonuses for being enraged and all that kind of stuff. But just know that enraged is a buff that you want to have up as much as possible, because you're going to get a lot of bonus effects for being enraged. And then we're also going to talk briefly about our mastery. So if you're looking at the mastery stat and increasing that on your gear, it just increases the damage that we deal while we're enraged by a certain amount. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to get in and talk about kind of how the rotation for this build is going to work. So because of our talent build, we have fresh meat. So Bloodthirst will always enrage you the first time you strike a target, and it has a 15% increased chance to trigger Enrage in general. So when we are approaching a target that we want to fight, we are going to first cast our Bloodthirst. We do this because Bloodthirst is going to give us that guaranteed Enrage, okay? And we want to be enraged. We want to stay enraged as much as possible. So generally, we want to cast Bloodthirst. All right, so once we get into our rotation, we've cast our Bloodthirst, then we want to go ahead and depending on the situation, we either want to go into our single target rotation or our multi-target rotation. Generally speaking, if we're fighting multiple targets like we are here, then we want to cast a Whirlwind. And the reason we're casting Whirlwind is it does a nice chunk of damage, but also it's going to cause our next 4 single target melee attacks to strike up to 4 additional targets. So let's check this out. If I go ahead and let's go in here real quick and turn the sounds back on. All right, so if I cast Bloodthirst, it hits this one target. All right, if I cast Whirlwind and then Bloodthirst, you're going to see it hit multiple targets there. Okay? So Whirlwind gives us this buff here that's called Whirlwind, and you can see we've got 3 stacks. This is going to make our next several single target attacks hit multiple targets until the buff goes away. Okay? So we're fighting against multiple targets, which is typically what we're going to want to do. So we're going to come in, we're going to Bloodthirst, then we're going to Whirlwind, and then typically we're going to hit Slam next. We're going to deal a bunch of damage to all the targets around us and get Slam on cooldown. Okay? However, there's a couple scenarios where we don't hit Slam next. And that's if we have enough rage to cast Rampage. We generally want to make that the priority. Right? So we'll cast Rampage. Or if we get our perk here that's called Sudden Death. So this is coming from our talent tree right here. Your attacks have a chance to reset the cooldown of Execute and make it usable on any target, regardless of health. If you remember, our Execute is generally an ability we can only use on targets under 35% health. However, we do have the chance to get Sudden Death and be able to use Execute on any target, in which case that becomes the priority. All right, so we're going to come up again. We're going to Bloodthirst. We're going to Whirlwind. In this case, we have enough rage. We want to Rampage. All right, then we would cast Slam to get it on cooldown. We'll cast Rampage again. Then, in this scenario, we still have Whirlwind, so we'll go ahead and do a Bloodthirst. Then, we'll get our Whirlwind buff back up. Rampage. Let's go ahead and cast Slam. We're going to cast Bloodthirst. All right, we got Rampage again. Now we need the Whirlwind buff again, so we'll cast that. Bloodthirst. We'll get Slam on cooldown. Rampage. Bloodthirst. We need Whirlwind again. Bloodthirst. Rampage. Bloodthirst. Slam on cooldown. We need Whirlwind again. So that's kind of the core rotation there. It's really just cycling through Slam, Rampage, and Bloodthirst while maintaining your Whirlwind buff and then casting Execute if you get the proc for Sudden Death. Okay? And that's generally how this rotation is going to work. Now, let's add on all the additional stuff that we can do for this rotation. And in the case of just fighting a single target, I would still recommend that you cast Whirlwind because it does a nice chunk of damage, even if you don't need the AoE. A lot of times, instead of a Bloodthirst, you can just throw out a Whirlwind, and that will deal some additional damage for you. Okay, so first we have the ways we can engage the target. Typically, what we're going to do is we're going to cast Charge. And Charge is going to scoot us over there. It's going to give us some initial rage. We're going to be at the targets. They get a little root, which isn't super important in PvE, but it is nice to have. So typically, that's the way we're going to engage a target, is we're going to charge. Alternatively, we do have our Heroic Leap, so we can jump into a group of targets if we want to. We could also use our Heroic Throw to throw our weapon at them and get them to come over to us. And we can also cast Taunt to pull them over as well. So those are the typical ways we're going to engage with the target. But most of the time, it's going to be you're just going to charge over to the target because you really do want that nice 20 rage generation to start off combat. Now, once we're in combat, we have a couple of additional things that we can do. So typically against a tough enemy or against a group of enemies, we want to be using at least one of our offensive cooldowns per pull. And whenever possible, you want that cooldown to be Odin's Fury because we just get so many benefits from casting Odin's Fury. So in this scenario here, if I were to charge in, the first thing I would do is cast Odin's Fury. It does damage to everyone around us. It gives us our haste buff on our auto attacks. It gives us our mini avatar. And you can see we just got a ton of rage from all the auto attacks and stuff that we were doing. So then we can get into actually spending our other abilities and using our main rotation. Now, let's say Odin's Fury is on cooldown. Well, in that case, another good thing to do here, you can charge in and you can cast Avatar. So this is on a longer cooldown, but it will cast Odin's Fury for us as well. So if you remember from our talent tree here, we have Titan's Torment, where when we cast Odin's Fury, we get a reduced effectiveness Avatar. However, when we cast Avatar, we get the full effect Odin's Fury. So we really have Odin's Fury on our bar twice. It's just the more powerful one is the one when we cast actual Avatar, because we get the full length of the Avatar buff, whereas the kind of weaker one is the regular Odin's Fury because we get a shorter Avatar buff. Now, if you're in a scenario where you've pulled a lot of enemies and they have a good chunky amount of health, then that's where you start to use your Thunderous Roar, or you can use your Ravager. So if we charge in and we hit our Odin's Fury, and we know these guys are going to take us a long time to kill, we can cast Thunderous Roar. Now, Thunderous Roar, we don't want to cast it haphazardly because it does have a longer cooldown. And one of the key things here is 2/3 of the damage from this ability are in the bleed that happens over 10 seconds. So you really don't want to cast this on enemies that you're going to kill within, 4 or 5 seconds, because you've wasted a good chunk, about 1/3 of the damage from Thunderous Roar. So if you're going to pull like a rare spawn and it has a few adds or something like that, this is a great ability to use because you're almost guaranteed to get the full length of the damage over time ability on the rare spawn, and then the damage from that damage over time ability can actually do quite a bit of damage to the adds that come with the rare spawn, so you don't have to worry about it as much. So then our last little ability we can include here is going to be Ravager. So Ravager does its damage over about 12 seconds. So again, it's even longer than our Thunderous Roar. So it has the same cooldown, but we want to be as, conservative with it as possible. In my opinion, you should basically always be casting one of these abilities every time you do a group pull or like a rare spawn pull. But that's really up to you and how confident you are and whether you think you need to save those cooldowns. So again, we could charge in, we could get our Odin's Fury going, and then we could drop our Ravager. It's targeted here. It's going to put out the spinning blades, and those are going to do a significant amount of damage to targets in that AoE. So again, to kind of recap here, in general, we're going to charge in. We're going to drop Odin's Fury, or we'll drop Avatar. Then our priority is to spin Rage on Rampage. We can Bloodthirst to get enraged if we're not already enraged from our Odin's Fury or Avatar auto attacks that we're doing. We cast Execute whenever it's available, and then we basically want to keep everything on cooldown. Whirlwind buff up, Bloodthirst, our Rampage, our Slam, our Executes, our Rampages, etc., etc., etc. So what I want to show you is how we can stack all this stuff together to do quite a bit of burst damage. While we're waiting for some cooldowns, we'll go ahead again and talk about some of our other utility abilities. So obviously we have our Pummel, so we can pummel to interrupt. And then we also have our Stormbolt. Now the nice thing about our Stormbolt is it actually has a 20-yard range. So if somebody's casting over there, we can just throw that out. It's going to stun them, and then it's also going to interrupt their cast. So that's pretty nice for us as well. And then before we get into this stacking here, let's talk really quickly about how we are going to utilize Enrage Regeneration. We'll showcase Impending Victory when we fight against actual targets. So if we are fighting this enemy and our health is getting kind of low and we're worried about the possibility of dying, then what we're going to do is we're going to cast Enrage Regeneration. Immediately after Enrage Regeneration, our priority becomes to cast Bloodthirst as much as possible. So we would cast this, and then we would Bloodthirst, go through our regular rotation, except this time, every time Bloodthirst comes up, we are prioritizing casting that ability for as long as we have Enraged Regeneration. Okay, and the reason for that is our Bloodthirst is going to heal us for quite a bit. Okay? Once that Enraged Regeneration window is down, then we go back to doing our normal rotation, because in that scenario, the best defense is a good offense, right? But as soon as you have Enraged Regeneration, your best defense is cast Bloodthirst to heal yourself. All right, so we have all of our stuff back. So here's kind of a way that we can do this, okay? When we go into this, we could charge in. What we want to do is we want to pop our Avatar first, not our Odin's Fury. Right? The reason for this is we want to get this on cooldown as soon as possible. We want the longest amount of duration on Avatar, and we want the 20% increased damage bonus when we apply all of our bleeds and damage over time effects. Following that, we want to cast Ravager because this has a longer cooldown, and also it's going to have a longer damage over time ability. Then we want to cast our Thunderous Roar. Then we can go into our rotation, and once our Avatar drops off, then we can cast Odin's Fury again. Okay, so we're going to charge in, we'll hit Avatar, we're going to drop our Ravager on the target, we're going to Thunderous Roar, and then we're basically going to go into our rotation. All right, so we're going to cast our Rampage, our Bloodthirst. All right, we're going to Rampage again, and what we're waiting on is this Avatar to drop off. Once the Avatar drops off, then we're going to go ahead and we're going to pop Odin's Fury. So that's going to give us that full Odin's Fury effect again. And then we're also going to get that little bit of Avatar. All right, so that's essentially how we can do some burst against some targets by stacking all those up together. All right, and that is pretty much the rotation here. Those are the abilities you're going to be using. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to go out and we're going to use these abilities against some actual targets. So we're going to fly over. And we're just going to go and find some random mobs out here. Out in the open world content. So let's head over here. We'll go to the Onaran Plains over here. All right. So we've got ourselves just a regular enemy out here. So like I said, what we're going to do is charge in. We're going to get our Odin's Fury going. We're going to cast our Bloodthirst, get Slam on cooldown. We're going to use our Ravager. All this stuff. It doesn't have to be perfect. That comes with practice. All right, so our target is pretty low. We're going to cast Impending Victory. And you can see, hopefully you notice that shot us up from about 70% health or so, all the way up to 100% health. So, and it reset the cooldown for us. So charge in, we're going to Bloodthirst, get Slam on cooldown, we're going to cast our Rampage. We should have cast Rampage first there, because we had the Rage for it. All right, Slam back on cooldown, we need Whirlwind. Rampage. I'm not using any cooldowns this time. We're just doing a regular rotation. Alright, and then Impending Victory when they're low. So we're basically still at full health. Okay? So let's see if we can get ourselves a few more enemies here. Alright, we'll see if we can pull... We'll pull these 4. Alright, so what we can do here is we can taunt that enemy. We can come over here and we can Heroic Throw on that one. And we could just come over here to this one. Alright, so we're going to Bloodthirst. We're going to get our Odin's Fury going. Whirlwind. Then we're going to Rampage. Alright, so we're getting low. We'll hit our Enraged Regeneration. And we'll just start Bloodthirsting every chance we get to give ourselves some nice big boosts of health. Alright, we're going to Whirlwind, we're going to get Slam on cooldown, we're going to Bloodthirst, we got an Execute here. A target's low, so we're going to do Impending Victory. Alright, we've got our Execute again, let's cast our Whirlwind. Alright, Slam on cooldown. Okay. Now, that's kind of where we're at on that. As you can see, we ended that fight with pretty much full health, almost. We got some kind of damage over time on us somewhere, but that's okay. So what I want to introduce you to here is my Weak Auras rotation helper for this build. So I actually have put together a Weak Auras, which is what you're seeing here, that actually tells you basically the order that you should cast your abilities in. It's not 100% follow it. You still have to use your own judgment, but it definitely helps with the timing of some things. So if you pay attention right here, you'll see that this is telling me to charge. That's the normal way we want to engage. And then I can just follow the list from left to right at my discretion, right? So like I don't want to use Dragon's or Thunderous Roar here, so I'm not going to. I'm just going to overlook that and go to the next ability. So as I'm doing this, you'll notice that I am casting these abilities basically in pretty close to the optimal order. Again, this is not something that's designed to play the game for you. You still have to make some smart decisions. For example, again, I don't want to cast Thunderous Roar here, so I'm just going to skip over that because I know I don't want to use it on a single target. So I'm reading this from left to right, but I'm just skipping over Thunderous Roar and casting whatever the next ability is. Here, again, like maybe I don't want to use Thunderous or Odin's Fury at this point because this target's like already below 50% health. So I'm not going to do that. But again, that's up to me and my judgment. This is something that I have available for anybody who is a member of the Guilded server. So Guilded is our server for our community and our community events. I post things there like my add-ons. I post my Weak Auras helpers. I post all this kind of stuff here. So we're just going to go all out on this enemy with everything except for Avatar. And we'll show, you know, how big of a difference this makes in our DPS. It's quite a bit, right? Okay, we got a grand hunt. You know, we're gonna do some, maybe we'll do some bonus content here. If we can find this guy. This stuff has been pretty bugged sometimes. Oh, nope, he's right here. At this point, you guys, the guide is basically done, so it's up to you if you want to watch a little bonus content or not. we're gonna do. I think we're gonna do this grand hunt just as a way to kind of showcase the build, showcase the weak Aura's helper, and kind of go from there. What do we got? All right, let's follow the tracks. This is one of the things I really like about Dragonflight right now, is that you kind of can just get caught up in whatever random thing is happening in the open world at the time, which is really, really nice. This is a lot of creature tracks to examine. I hope there's more people than just me out here. All right, everybody. So I want to thank you for tuning into this build. I appreciate you guys taking the time to watch it. Hopefully this build works out well for you. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please leave them in the comment section below. I do my absolute best to get back to everybody as much as I possibly can and answer the questions that you may or may not have. Again, I want to encourage you all to join the Gilded server. There's a link in the description below, and that will just let you get involved with us, and you can get involved in our community and our community events. Okay, we got to hunt creatures, so let's do it. All right, we're going full on, you know, everything here. Let's go. All right, let's do it. Okay, so we're going to pop that. Let's go. Here we go. All right. And for this, again, I'm using my rotation helper here. Just kind of following along what it's recommending. Easy peasy. We can contribute over there. Nope, didn't get it. We do have a little druid going a little crazy over here. Let's go help him out. All right, let's go find some more creatures here. What do we got? One there. I mean, all this stuff should count. It doesn't look like it's counting. I don't want to risk it, you know. I don't want to fight like 12 things that I don't need to fight because they don't actually count. All right, here we go. Can we pull this one too? Yeah, there we go. All right, good old interrupt there. %, should get it. There we go. Clear the singing stone. All new stuff for me. Now in group content, it's a little bit different. You can be a little more liberal with your cooldowns because you don't always need to be so particular. You don't need to be so cautious about trying to stay alive because you're in a group. So normally it's a little easier to do that. I like that we kind of stumbled upon a grand hunt. You know, I don't think this is something that's going to occur for most of our other videos. So it's kind of cool to be able to kick things off. This is the first one that's being done. So it's kind of nice to have this little extra bonus content at the end. Sorry for all my add-on errors here. Hey! What? Oh, nice! That is the first Mystic Band I've gotten. Mystic Bands are an item that you can get from picking up, what's it called? Something of the blue in enchanting. Alright, so this is where we got a big sort of boss here. We can kind of dump some extra cooldowns on him. So right there, I stunned him, so he would stop doing that ability. Oh. Oh, that hurts. Okay, I don't know how I feel about that. That's whatever he's doing there. That thing hurts. Alright, so we gotta hunt Norbit. I love it. It's really cool seeing everybody like take off. Alright, so hunt Norbit. Oh, we gotta clear the dam. Interesting. Oh, there we go. Oh, it's a big beaver. Nice. Alright, we're gonna use all of our cooldowns here. We're not gonna use Avatar because we just cast our Odin's Fury. Alright, now we can cast Avatar. Alright. Now, who are we hunting? Alright, what are we doing here? Oh, let's get our battle shout back up. Alright, we got something right over here. Oh, a big old paw. Okay. That is a big old beast. Oh, get out. Alright, here we go. Let's get that going. Alright, let's drop our AoE. Cast Avatar. Use charge to reposition. Interrupt. Oh, got a Helm of Feline Instinct, which unfortunately I can't wear. Alright, so we got 0 of 6 hunts remaining, so we're on the last one. Nice. We got our Grand Hunt spoils. And we got... Okay. We got a little companion unlock for our Grand Hunt companion. That's super cool. Alright, cool. So that was a little bonus content there for you at the end of the video here. Again, like I said, I hope you enjoyed the build. I hope the build works out well for you. Let me know in the comment section below what questions or comments you have about the build. Don't forget to hit up the Gilded community via the link in the description below. Also, you can check the description below for the talent builds for level 10 or 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and 70. And also any additional resources that I have for you are going to be down there in the comment section too. All right, you guys, don't forget to like, subscribe, you know, all that kind of good stuff. And let me know that you enjoyed the video. Thank you for your time, and I will see you on the next one.